A warm welcome to you. This is the Truth Report. Here are today's top stories. Nigeria's Christian community welcomes U.S. congressional recommendation on religious persecution. The Nigerian government rejects false reports of Christian killings, calls claims misinformation. And Borno state government appeals to donors to fill U.S. aid funding vacuum as humanitarian crisis worsens. The Christian community in Nigeria has welcomed a U.S. congressional recommended resolution urging sanctions against Nigeria over the widespread killing of Christians. A report by the Observatory for Religious Freedom in Africa estimates that more than 55,000 people were killed between October 2019 and September 2023, while at least 21,000 others were abducted. Christian leaders say the Nigerian government has failed to protect its citizens, while the U.S. Congress is now pushing for action. Truth Nigeria TV's Mike Oder James has more details.
Christian leaders across Nigeria are hailing the U.S. congressional push to redesignate Nigeria as a country of particular concern, calling it a crucial step in addressing the ongoing attacks on their communities. The president of Christian Association of Nigeria for the 19 northern states, Reverend John Joseph Hayab, says the resolution is long overdue. While welcoming the international intervention, he called on the Nigerian government to take urgent steps to prevent possible sanctions.
There's something about global politics that we have to acknowledge. If Nigeria is being sanctioned today, we too will be victims. So since they are thinking, okay, let's remind our government to do what is right. I hope you understand. So that they won't even put it, because if they say we're going to put you because you don't open your door in the morning, then from the next day we start opening our doors in the morning. Probably after 2 weeks, they will now realize that we are opening our doors and they will sanction us again. And what is the reason? The reason simply is that people have been violating people's religious rights and nobody brings them to book. Our government should wake up and start doing that. We want for others what we want for ourselves. We don't just want for ourselves. So if we want respect for religious rights, we want it for everybody. Traditional worshippers, call Hindus, call everybody. Because by the time we fight it as a collective struggle for the right of everybody.
For Kaduna-based cleric, Reverend David Ayuba Azaman, the resolution is a sign that the world is finally paying attention to the persecution of Christians in Nigeria. However, he criticizes the Nigerian media for failing to highlight the full extent of the crisis.
We, the Christians of Nigeria, we have been calling on the international community to look into our plight, because the mainstream media doesn't cover what is happening to Christians in Nigeria. You hardly see it in the mainstream media. You can only see it on social media, but the mainstream media doesn't cover it. The killings are going on every day, persecution. They kidnap our teenage girls. They force them into marriage. They Islamize them. So really, Nigeria should be a country of concern.
Similarly, David Onyuloku Ida, director of International Human Rights Commission, believes Nigerian political leaders should bear the brunt of whatever sanctions are imposed. He accused them of allowing the killings to persist.
On sanctions, I will assume, first of all, that it's been decided that sanctions are the best way to go. And I'll say once again that, yes, I will commend sanctions. But then again, what kinds of sanctions and who are the targets of such sanctions? The proviso I will advise the president on would be that sanctions are welcome, provided that they are not passed down from the elites to the common people by their lack of action against terrorism, especially in northern Nigeria. So sanctions should come from America against the Nigerian military brass, yes, against the Nigerian military brass, of whom the president of Nigeria is a commander-in-chief. We want to place travel ban on them, medical ban on them, commercial trade bans on them, ownership of businesses and trading rights across the whole of Western world on them. a blanket ban exclusively on the leadership.
As international pressure mounts, Christian leaders say the Nigerian government must act swiftly to curb the violence. But with thousands of lives already lost and attacks still ongoing, the question remains, will the government finally take action, or will it take foreign sanctions to force the change? Mike Ode James, reporting for Truth Nigeria TV, Kaduna.
In reaction to claims of Christian persecution, the Nigerian government is pushing back against allegations that Christians are being specifically targeted for killings across the country. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs dismissed the claims as misinformation designed to pressure Washington into sanctioning Nigeria over religious persecution. A statement from Kimiabi Ebienfa, the ministry's acting spokesperson, reads in part, "The unfortunate development is intended to influence foreign governments, especially the United States government, to designate Nigeria a country of particular concern due to the violence against Christians." While the federal government acknowledges the security challenges confronting the nation, it is imperative to clarify that these negative activities are not driven by religious bias, nor targeted against any particular religious group. End of quote. The federal government insists Nigeria is a multi-religious nation and remains committed to protecting all citizens. Officials are urging the media, civil society groups, and foreign allies to stop spreading what they call unverified claims, warning that such narratives could further destabilize the country. Well, for more on these claims of misinformation, we turn to Truth Nigeria TV's Mike Ode James, who joins me now from Kaduna State. Hello, Mike. Now, the government has dismissed reports of Christian killings as misinformation. Now, from your on-the-ground reporting this year, that is 2025 alone, what have you seen?
Okay, Mary. From my reports and from where I've been to communities where I've gone to cover, I think the federal government is actually not being accurate here. I've been to Kauru County, I've been to Kajuru County, I've been to Kaura County, I've been to Kachia County with my colleague, Luka Binyat, and some other reporters. Now, Kajuru County and the rest are dominated by Christians from southern Kaduna. And over 10,000 has been displaced from Kajuru. Another 50,000 were displaced from Kusheka, a community that has over 120,000 persons. 50,000 were displaced. If the government says it's a campaign of disinformation, I think the government is not right based on what we see on the ground. Over to you, Mary.
Now, the government argues that these attacks are not religiously motivated and affect all Nigerians equally. Now, from your investigations, are Christians being primarily targeted?
Okay, Mary. Well, the argument of the federal government that the attacks are not religiously motivated may also not be true. I'm sorry to say that, Mary. When you look at Boko Haram is a word coined in Hausa, which means Western education is haram, that is forbidden in Islam. Now, 90% of the population in northern Nigeria who are being targeted by Boko Haram at its initial stages are Christians. They started targeting Christian churches. They started targeting their schools because they feel schools are also not supposed to be in Borno, and then it's escalated. When you go to Benue, the people who are attacking are Muslim. And what is the aim of the attack? To grab their land and then resettle the Fulanis and other tribes which are Muslims. The Fulanis who are attacking also have this idea about Usman Danfodio Jihad or empire, which came in 1802 when Usman Danfodio defeated the Hausa Empire and then imposed an Islamic caliphate. The Fulanis are trying to replicate the same today in the middle belt of the country. It has a religious connotation. Over to you, Mary.
All right, Mike Other James reporting from Kaduna State. Thank you so much for your insights. And despite government efforts to combat terrorism in southern Kaduna, Christian majority communities continue to suffer attacks by armed Fulani militias. Many kidnapped victims endure severe torture, starvation, and inhumane treatment until hefty ransom demands are met. Ladi Joel, kidnapped in January 2025 from Barde village, Kajuru County, was forced to trek for 4 days without food or water before reaching the terrorist camp deep inside Regina Forest. She describes the camp as vast with countless hostages, many of whom remain in captivity. Her mother, however, Kauna Emmanuel, took a desperate risk to secure her daughter's release.
An kama ni ran 20 ga wata na daya. Na yi tafiya rana daya na ji na kai wani wuri. Sai muka kara gaba kuma mun yi tafiya kwana 4 kamin mun kai inda an kai ni. Wurin katon daji ne a wurin inda muna kwance sarari ba sarari cikin duhu ne kuma akwai duwatsu a wurin. A wurin kuma muna kwance a kasa ne, abinci kuma za a bamu ba gishiri ba magi. Haka muna ta zama wata rana za mu yi kwana 4 ba ci ba sha. Ana daddaura mu, ana yi mana duka, wata rana za a yi mana duka sau 2, wata rana za a yi mana duka sau 3 a rana. Kuma mun da aka kama mu muna da yawa a wurin, bukoki ne, ba wai guda daya ba ne, ba zan ma san lissafinsu ba. Ran 16 ne ina zama sai na ganga mamana ta zo sai aka sake ni. Ta zo ta ba da kudi sai aka sake ni. Na taka da kafa ne kamin na zo na kai wurin mamana sai mai mashin ya zo ya doke mu da ita.
Ni ce mai yarinyar nan muna zama sai na ji labari Fulani sun yi kidnapping nata. Da aka yi kidnapping nata ana nan ana ciniki. Aka kai yadda sun ce mu kawo kudi. Sai ba a samu wanda zai kai ba sai na ce zan je in kai kudi din nan. Sai na tashi ran 16 ga wata 3. Na je wurin. Da na je na kai can Mina. Sai na siya shinkafa a wurin na hada da kudin da aka sa mana. Na rike na je na same ta da agwai guda daya sun zauna a tushi suna jira na. Sai na je na bashi kudin nan da wayari da shinkafan nan. Sai aka dauke ni aka ce to a kai shinkafan nan da aka gama mun jira sai an zo an dauke mu a mashin da ita muka koma inda na soka. Shinkafa buhu 3. Na ba da wayoyi guda 4 da power bank guda 2 da miliyan 6.
And pipeline explosions and a state of emergency fuel fresh tensions in all rich Rivers State. Militants are allegedly plotting attacks. What does this mean for security and stability in the region? We'll bring you more on this and other top stories after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Here's a quick recap of today's top stories. Nigeria's Christian community is backing a U.S. congressional resolution urging sanctions over the killing of Christians. Christian leaders say the Nigerian government has failed to protect its citizens, while the U.S. Congress is now demanding action. Meanwhile, Nigeria's government is pushing back against claims that Christians are being specifically targeted, calling it misinformation meant to pressure Washington into sanctions. Officials warn that such narratives could destabilize the country. The humanitarian crisis in Nigeria's northeast is worsening as international funding cuts hit displaced communities the hardest. The U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, has pulled funding from critical sectors, leaving states like Borno and Benue struggling to provide food, clean water, and healthcare to millions already devastated by years of violence. But while the crisis deepens, Borno state officials are speaking out, urging other donors to step in before conditions deteriorate further.
For over a decade, many residents of Borno State, northeastern Nigeria, have depended on international aid to survive. Boko Haram and ISWAP insurgencies have displaced more than 1.5 million people, forcing many into overcrowded camps with little access to food, clean water, or healthcare. But with the recent withdrawal of USAID funding, the situation has gone from dire to desperate.
The impact of floods in the 4 local governments of MMC, Jere, Konduga, and Mafa is so serious to the extent that many people have lost their means of livelihood. A lot of homes have been destroyed, latrines have been destroyed, and at the same time, economic activities have also been destroyed, and it has impacted a lot on the communities of these 4 local governments that you have made mention.
The funding cut has impacted several key sectors, including health, education, and agriculture. Flooding in September 2023 further compounded the crisis, contaminating water sources and leaving thousands without proper sanitation. The result? A surge in waterborne diseases, malnutrition, and growing desperation among families who have already lost everything. Humanitarian groups like the Christian Rural and Urban Development Association of Nigeria and the Center for Advocacy, Transparency, and Accountability Initiative have provided emergency relief in recent months, supporting over 25,000 households with cash assistance, food, and water sanitation supplies. But as their projects wrap up, the future remains uncertain.
Presently, we're closing out the project today, and there's still a lot of need. There's still a lot of areas for support. There's still a lot of wash needs in the state, and in the areas of feeding, there's still areas of need for food and other aspects. Our partners need more funding and more support, and we advise that more support be given to the government and other partners to fill in these gaps, because the humanitarian need is still there. A lot of things has been done by other partners, but more can be done.
This project, the most important thing, it was timely. We conceptualized the project at the time when people in Maiduguri are in their need of humanitarian intervention, especially related to wash, multipurpose cash, and other things. So the project has been handy, whereby supporting affected flood households to recover from some of the shocks of the flooding.
Borno is not alone. In Benue State, thousands of internally displaced persons face similar struggles. Camps are overcrowded, food supplies are dwindling, and healthcare services are overstretched. The Nigerian government has promised support, but many say it's not enough. With millions of vulnerable Nigerians at risk, the need for international aid has never been greater. Borno officials are calling on donors to step in before the humanitarian crisis spirals further out of control.
And tensions are escalating in Nigeria's oil-rich Rivers State as militants regroup following the federal government's declaration of a state of emergency. Multiple pipeline explosions have rocked the region, raising fears of an imminent wave of violence that could further destabilize the country, with threats of attacks on federal properties and growing unrest among residents. Concerns over national security and economic stability are mounting. The heart of Nigeria's oil industry is on edge. A series of explosions at critical oil infrastructure in Rivers State have ignited fresh concerns about escalating violence. The latest blast, which struck the Soku oil facility in Akukutoru County, comes just days after similar incidents rocked the Trans-Niger pipeline in Bodo and another site in the Ogba Egbema Ndoni County area. Authorities are still investigating whether these explosions were caused by sabotage or equipment failure. But the timing, coming just after the federal government's declaration of a state of emergency in Rivers State, has only fueled speculation that militants are resuming their attacks.
It is public knowledge that the governor of Rivers State, for unjustifiable reasons, demolished the House of Assembly of the state as far back as 13th December 2023, and as up to now, 14 months after, now rebuild the same. I have made personal interventions between the contending parties for a peaceful resolution of this crisis, but my efforts have been largely ignored by the parties to the crisis. It has become inevitably compelling for me to invoke the provision of the Section 305 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended, to declare a state of emergency in Rivers State.
The declaration, which suspended the state's governor and legislature, has further inflamed tensions. Militants who have long clashed with the government over all revenues and regional autonomy are reportedly reconvening in undisclosed locations to plan coordinated attacks. Nigerians fear that a renewed insurgency in the Niger Delta could cripple Nigeria's economy, which relies heavily on crude oil exports.
90% of Nigeria's revenue comes from the Niger Delta. Even these states that are implementing Sharia, most of the money they get in running the Sharia is from the Niger Delta, because most of the states are not even viable, especially the states in the north. So bombing this oil pipeline will cause a drawback in the fight against terrorism, because if now the source of revenue of the country is being attacked, where would the country get money to finance buying of arms? It's not going to be possible.
In his televised address, President Bola Tinubu warned that inaction is not an option. He cited intelligence reports showing a surge in militant activities and pipeline vandalism, accusing the ousted governor of failing to curb the rising threats.
The latest security report made available to me show that between yesterday and today, there have been disturbing incidents of vandalization of pipelines by some militants without governor taking any action to curtail them. I have, of course, given stand order to the security agencies to ensure safety of lives of goods people of Rivers State and the oil pipelines.
With the appointment of retired Vice Admiral Iboketi Ibas as the state administrator, federal forces are now in control of the region. Security operations are being ramped up, but with militants already regrouping, the next few weeks could determine whether Rivers State descends into further chaos or if stability can be restored.
I extend my hand to every son and daughter of Rivers State, regardless of political affiliation, ethnicity, or creed. I urge you to remain law-abiding, peaceful, and optimistic. Let us set aside our differences and work together to rebuild trust, restore stability, and protect the future of our children.
As tensions mount, all eyes are on Rivers State. Will the state of emergency succeed in quelling the unrest, or will Nigeria's old heartland erupt into violence once again? Only time will tell. In Nigeria, the military has handed over 75 rehabilitated terrorists to the Borno state government as part of ongoing efforts to combat insurgency in the country's northeast. This comes as the military continues its operations against terror groups, oil theft and banditry. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Defense Headquarters denies reports that communities in the north have been making peace deals with bandits for protection.
Nigeria's Director, Defense Media Operations, Major General Marcus Kange, arrives at this press briefing, organized for an interaction with journalists to update them on the successes of the military. Kange starts the briefing with news that 75 rehabilitated former terrorists have been officially handed over to the Borno State authorities. The move, he says, is part of Nigeria's de-radicalization and reintegration program aimed at curbing the decade-long insurgency in the northeast.
They conducted fighting and peace-building patrols, raids, ambushes, clearance, as well as search and rescue operations, albeit with resounding successes. During the operations across various theaters, several terrorists were neutralized. Their collaborators were also apprehended, while some kidnapped victims were rescued. The week under review also witnessed handover of rehabilitated terrorists to the representatives of Borno State government. Also, gun runners, oil theft collaborators, and other violent extremists were also apprehended. Between 10 to 20 March, scores of terrorists were neutralized.
While the military advances counter-terror operations in the northeast, reports surfaced that some communities in northwestern Nigeria are allegedly striking peace deals with terrorists to avoid attacks. These claims Kange, however, dismissed.
Bandits are calling for peace deal with communities, or communities calling for peace deal with bandits. And what is the military doing about it, whether they are in support of that effort. To the best of our knowledge, we have never had any peace deal with bandits as military men. When the community want to do that, I don't think they go and seek approval from the military to do so. And the military, I don't think they are aware of that. The military is conducting their operations according to the rules of engagement and code of conduct for internal security operations, like I have told you. So if any community goes about calling bandit for any disease, the military does not support that. We don't support that effort by the community.
The director reaffirmed the military's commitment to eliminating terrorist threats and preventing economic sabotage. However, with widespread insecurity still plaguing parts of the country, many Nigerians remain skeptical about the long-term effectiveness of these efforts.
Left to every person in Nigeria, troops should be deployed in their houses. That is it. And where will we get those troops to deploy in every community? We shall continue to thank the troops also for their loyalty and for giving their all in ensuring that we overcome the security challenges bedeviling our country.
While the Nigerian government continues its fight against terrorism and economic crimes, questions remain about whether military action alone is enough to bring lasting peace and stability. For now, the nation watches closely as security forces battle multiple threats on different fronts.
Well, that's our bulletin for today. Thanks for staying with us. I am Mary Kanu. See you next time.